6, we'll talk about selecting the appropriate intervention strategy. So we'll explain why programs should be conceptualized and designed around their underlying hypotheses, talk about how to move from an understanding of a social problem to the construction of a hypothesis, why it is important to think through and understand the appropriate level of intervention, the logical process and the steps involved in developing a program hypothesis, the relationship between causal factors and effects to be tested through program design and implementation, and how to ensure that services provided focus on the barriers that were identified in the program hypothesis. So as part of that, we'll talk about hypotheses, different types of hypotheses, and their purposes. So the program hypothesis. Designing programs requires proposing hypotheses. Hypotheses are a series of if-then statements. Effective program design is a hypothesis-generating activity. If-then statements provide the mechanism for program evaluation, a hypothesis testing activity. Hypothesis generating facilitates identifying meaningful objectives and structuring these objectives in a hierarchical series of statements. Program evaluation is linked to the program hypothesis. Program evaluation should begin early in the planning process in order to assess program effectiveness. Evaluation begins with stating a proposed relationship between a program or service, the independent variable, and some desired outcome, the dependent variable. Intervening variables may appear in a causal chain between the independent variable and the dependent variable. The concept of intervening variables recognizes the existence of multi-causal models in understanding the complex nature of human service problems. To test program hypotheses, the causal chain must be explicated. So types of program hypotheses. Where to intervene. Need to identify the etiology of the problem, or as we said, causes of the problem. Most social problems are associated with multiple factors or conditions. Need to determine if an intervention at the community level is feasible. Some preconditions can only be dealt with at the regional or national level. Some preconditions will not benefit from intervention because of a lack of knowledge or technology to induce change. Some preconditions may not be addressed because they cannot be controlled or control is socially or culturally unacceptable. If intervention at the community level to address the root cause of the problem is not feasible, need to recognize preconditions to the presence of the problem that help explain or provide insight into the problem, but they do not become the targets of the intervention. Need to move from higher levels of factors to identification of factors a program may be able to actually change. Statement of a condition. The concept of social problem is relative. It's shaped by a frame of reference that allows a condition to be interpreted. Interpretation can result in a condition being labeled a social problem that may become the stimulus and justification for action. There are 3 different components to the statement of a social problem: qualitative statement, quantitative statement, justification for action statement, and this is based on the first 2 components, the qualitative and quantitative statements. When we're looking at program hypotheses, we also are considering the idea of consequences. If possible, program hypothesis should focus clearly and consistently on causes or factors associated with causes. In instances where social problems have reached beyond primary effects to secondary and tertiary consequences, program hypotheses need to shift focus from causes to consequences and target factors associated with consequences and factors. The strength of the transformation of conditions into problems and problems into needs depends on willingness and ability to propose relational statements, if then or means ends, that explain what is proposed and why. Relational statements are the rationale for taking action and for the action. The value of effectiveness-based program planning is the ability to create, design, and implement a relevant service that is likely to reduce or eliminate the problem. So how do we incorporate problem analysis into program design? Program planning requires making connections among causes, consequences, factors, and service. Ignoring inconsistencies between cause, consequences, factors, and services enables a program to waste resources, provide ineffective services, and ultimately fail. New discoveries call for new, innovative, and redesigned services. Revamped services, sometimes I hear people say. Benefits of the program hypothesis: helps focus programs on problems rather than activities, links program activities to outcomes, provides a basis for long-range planning, provides a framework for continuous monitoring and evaluation of the service provision process, and provides a database for cost benefit and cost effectiveness studies.